The restaurant was alive with quiet chatter and the soft clinking of fine cutlery against plates. The scent of fresh bread and roasted coffee beans filled the air, mingling with the faint perfume of flowers placed in delicate vases on each table. In this luxurious place, people came not just to eat but to be seen, to enjoy the finest food, and to listen to soft music playing in the background. It was the kind of place where laughter and whispers blended together, and every detail seemed perfectly in place. Yet, in the midst of all this elegance, there was a young waitress moving carefully between the tables, balancing trays stacked with dishes and drinks. She was not the kind of person who drew attention at first glance. Her uniform was simple and neat, her hair tied back, and her hands always steady. She smiled politely at the guests, taking their orders and serving them with a quiet professionalism that made her almost invisible. In the grand room, the young woman had been working here for several months, learning the rhythm of the restaurant and remembering the preferences of regular guests. She knew which tables liked extra napkins, which ones preferred their drinks a certain way, and which guests always wanted the same dishes. She was good at her job, but no one really noticed her beyond the polite nods and brief smiles that passed as she moved along the polished floors. It was a routine life, predictable and steady, and she had grown used to it. Yet, she carried with her a quiet passion, a secret that she had shared with no one in the restaurant. She could play the piano beautifully. She had learned when she was a child, spending countless hours practicing in small rooms with worn-out keys, dreaming of one day playing in front of an audience. But life had taken her in another direction, and now she worked here, serving others while keeping her music hidden. On this particular evening, the restaurant was busier than usual. A group of wealthy guests had arrived, occupying the largest table in the center of the room. They wore elegant suits and sparkling jewelry, their voices loud and confident. Among them was a man who clearly enjoyed showing off his wealth and influence. He had a way of laughing that made people notice him, a deep, confident sound that drew attention even in the midst of the background noise. He leaned back in his chair, swirling the drink in his glass and watching the young waitress move from table to table. He seemed amused by her quiet diligence, perhaps seeing her as just another employee, someone who served but had no other remarkable qualities. He leaned toward his companions, speaking in a low, mocking tone that was just loud enough for those around him to hear. "I bet she can't even play a simple song on that piano over there," he said, nodding toward the grand instrument in the corner. It gleamed under the soft lights, a beautiful piece of craftsmanship that had been in the restaurant for years. The piano sat almost as a decoration, occasionally used when a musician was hired to perform. The guests laughed lightly at his comment, but he seemed serious in his challenge, the kind of man who enjoyed proving a point and showing his authority. The young waitress happened to hear the remark as she passed by. She paused for a moment, her hand still holding a tray, and looked toward the table. Her heart beat a little faster, not with fear, but with a spark of curiosity and excitement. She had always hoped for an opportunity like this, though she had never expected it to come so suddenly, in such a public and intimidating setting. For a brief second, she imagined the laughter she would earn if she tried and failed, but that thought quickly faded. She knew she could play. She had practiced for years, pouring her emotions into every note, and she trusted herself. Setting the tray down on the nearest table, she took a deep breath and walked toward the piano. The chatter in the room seemed to grow quieter as people noticed her approach. The wealthy man's eyes followed her, full of amusement, as if he were about to watch a joke unfold. The other guests murmured among themselves, curiosity sparking in their voices. No one expected what was about to happen. She approached the piano with calm determination, her fingers brushing lightly over the smooth surface before settling on the keys. The polished black and white keys reflected the soft lights above, and for a moment, the room seemed to hold its breath. She sat down on the piano bench, straightening her posture. Her uniform felt suddenly heavy, as if it were a costume she was wearing for a performance. But she let go of that thought. She closed her eyes briefly, remembering the countless hours she had spent practicing, the music that had always been her companion, and the joy it had brought her even in the quietest moments of life. Then, slowly, she let her hands fall on the keys. A single note sounded, soft and clear, and the room seemed to notice. The wealthy man leaned forward slightly, a smirk still playing on his lips, certain that this would be over in moments. The other guests exchanged glances, some whispering, others watching in polite silence. But the young waitress was not performing for the applause or the approval of these people. She was playing for the music itself, for the story each note could tell. Her fingers moved with confidence and grace, producing a melody that was both simple and beautiful, something that seemed to flow naturally from her heart. The sound filled the room, soft at first, like a gentle breeze, and then growing, carrying a depth and emotion that no one had expected from someone so quiet and unassuming. It was not just skill they were hearing, it was feeling, a connection that reached out to everyone present, touching them in a way words could not. As the first few notes played, the laughter and chatter that had filled the air faded. People stopped talking, turning their attention to the piano, to the young woman whose presence had seemed so ordinary just moments before. The wealthy man's smirk faltered, replaced by a flicker of surprise and then curiosity. He had expected amusement, a brief, comical attempt that would end in embarrassment. But what he heard now was something entirely different, something that demanded attention and respect. He shifted in his seat, leaning forward, eyes fixed on the young woman as she continued to play. The melody was intricate, flowing naturally, full of emotion that seemed far beyond the walls of the restaurant. It was music that spoke of patience, practice, and passion. With each passing moment, the room transformed. The soft lighting and elegant surroundings became a stage, the tables and chairs a silent audience. Guests who had come to impress and be noticed found themselves captivated, leaning in, holding their breath, and listening. The waitress played not with pride, but with sincerity, letting the music carry her story without interruption. And in that moment, all the doubts, judgments, and expectations faded, replaced by awe and admiration. She had stepped into the spotlight unexpectedly, yet she commanded it naturally, not as a show, but as an expression of herself. The wealthy man, who had moments ago been so certain of his amusement, now felt a strange mix of disbelief and admiration. He had underestimated her, dismissed her as just a waitress, and yet here she was, filling the room with music that no one had anticipated. He glanced around at the other guests, noticing their expressions of surprise and wonder, and realized that this was no ordinary performance. It was something far more profound than he could have imagined. The young woman, unaware of the impact she was having, continued to play, her eyes occasionally glancing down at the keys, but mostly focused inward, letting the melody guide her hands. As the last note of the first piece lingered in the air, the room remained silent for a moment, as if unsure how to react. Then, a soft murmur of appreciation began, spreading gradually until it became clear that the audience was moved. The wealthy man's eyes met hers, and for the first time, he seemed genuinely impressed, a hint of humility replacing his earlier arrogance. He had laughed at her, bet against her, and yet she had turned the situation completely on its head, and she had done it without anger, without arrogance, simply by being herself and letting her music speak for her. In that moment, the young waitress realized something important. She had crossed a line she had only imagined before. She had stepped out from behind the role of the server, from the uniform that kept her unnoticed, and had shown a part of herself that could not be ignored. And though the restaurant would soon return to its usual rhythm, she knew that something had changed, not just for the guests who had witnessed her music, but for herself as well. She had embraced the chance, however unexpected, and had allowed her passion to be seen and heard. And for the first time in a long while, she felt completely alive, confident in the knowledge that she could transform a moment, a room, even a skeptical heart, with nothing more than her talent and courage. After the first few notes had been played, the atmosphere in the restaurant had shifted completely. Guests who had been chatting and laughing were now silent, their eyes drawn to the young waitress and the piano. The wealthy man, who had been so sure of himself just moments ago, found himself leaning forward in his chair, a mixture of curiosity and disbelief crossing his face. He watched as she continued to play, her fingers moving with ease and confidence, producing melodies that seemed to float through the room effortlessly. There was a natural grace in her performance, a way of turning simple notes into something that felt alive, breathing, and real. It was not just the skill, but the emotion behind it that caught everyone off guard. The waitress could feel the attention but did not let it overwhelm her. She had played for herself countless times, alone in small rooms, dreaming of a moment like this. But now that it was real, she focused on the music rather than the reactions around her. She let her fingers move freely across the keys, listening to the harmony she created, adjusting the tempo and the pressure with each note. The sound was rich, full of warmth, and it filled the room like a gentle wave, touching every listener. Some guests leaned closer to hear better, their expressions softening as they realized that this was no ordinary performance. Even the servers in the background paused, watching in quiet amazement, appreciating the depth and beauty that had appeared unexpectedly in their workplace. The wealthy man tried to hide his surprise at first, shifting in his seat, straightening his posture, and attempting a casual glance around the room to see if others shared his reaction. He quickly realized that the room was captivated, each person absorbed in the music. He had underestimated the young waitress completely, assuming that her role as a server defined her abilities. He had judged her based on appearance and occupation, but the music told a story he could not ignore. He felt a flicker of humility, a realization that there were things beyond his understanding and control, and that talent and passion could not be measured by wealth or social status. As she continued to play, the melody changed subtly, moving from a soft, gentle tune to something stronger, more intense. The audience could feel the shift, sensing the story unfolding in the music. Each note was carefully placed, each pause deliberate, creating tension and release, guiding emotions in a way that felt natural and effortless. It was a journey, an experience that held them in suspense and drew them closer with every passing moment. People who had initially doubted her talent were now fully engaged, unable to look away, caught in a spell woven by her skill and heartfelt performance. The waitress herself felt a surge of energy as she played. This was more than just proving something to the wealthy man or entertaining the audience. It was a moment of personal triumph. She had carried this talent in her heart for years, hidden and protected, and now it was finally being recognized. She remembered the long hours of practice, the times when her fingers ached and her mind grew tired, the sacrifices she had made to pursue her passion quietly. All of it had led to this moment, and she allowed herself to embrace the feeling fully, letting it guide her hands and her soul. The wealthy man could no longer maintain his mask of indifference. His smirk had disappeared completely, replaced by genuine fascination. He found himself leaning closer, eyes fixed on her movements. Noting how naturally she seemed to command the piano, he realized that he had been wrong in his assumptions, and that there was a lesson here about humility, respect, and the danger of underestimating someone based on appearance. He watched her with a mixture of admiration and a hint of shame for having laughed at her so confidently just minutes before. Other guests, too, were caught in a web of emotions. Some were silently moved, their eyes glistening as they listened. Others whispered to each other, sharing their astonishment at how someone so young, and so seemingly ordinary, could produce such extraordinary music. It was a reminder that talent could be hidden in the most unexpected places, and that assumptions often fell short when confronted with reality. The entire room was united in a moment of shared experience, brought together by the unexpected brilliance of the waitress. As the music progressed, she began to add small improvisations, subtle variations that showcased her creativity and understanding of the piano. She was no longer just playing a memorized piece. She was expressing herself fully, making the instrument an extension of her own voice. The audience could sense it, feeling the nuances and emotional depth in every note. The wealthy man, who had been the instigator of doubt and laughter, felt a strange admiration growing within him. He realized that this young woman had turned a moment that could have been embarrassing into something remarkable and unforgettable. The young waitress, in her quiet concentration, remained aware of the audience but did not let it distract her. She could feel the energy of the room, the tension and expectation, but she channeled it into her music rather than letting it interfere. She allowed herself to be fully present in the performance, letting every emotion, every memory, every moment of practice she had endured come through in the melody. It was as if the piano had become a bridge between her inner world and the room, connecting hearts without a single word spoken. People began to notice small details, like the way her fingers danced across the keys with precision, how her posture reflected confidence and poise, and how each chord seemed to carry meaning beyond the notes themselves. Some guests were quietly amazed, thinking back to their own assumptions and realizing how wrong they had been to judge her based on her role as a waitress. It was a humbling experience, a reminder that appearances could be deceiving and that true talent often lay beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment to be revealed. As the first half of her performance came to an end, a soft hush fell over the room. The audience, fully captivated, waited for the next movement, unsure of what would come but eager to experience it. The wealthy man, still seated at his table, could feel a mix of emotions: surprise, admiration, and a hint of regret for having doubted her. He had expected amusement, perhaps even embarrassment, but instead, he had witnessed a display of skill, confidence, and passion that left him momentarily speechless. The waitress took a brief pause, her fingers hovering above the keys as she gathered herself for the next section. She did not rush. She allowed the moment to breathe, letting the silence add to the tension and anticipation. The audience, sensing this pause, remained quiet, their eyes locked on her as if waiting for a story to continue. She smiled faintly to herself, knowing that this pause was as important as any note she would play. It gave time for the music to resonate, for the emotions to settle, and for the audience to connect more deeply with what was unfolding. Then, she began again, her fingers moving with renewed energy and precision. The melody shifted, carrying a sense of hope and determination, a reflection of her own journey. Each note was deliberate, each phrase a testament to years of dedication and practice. The audience was drawn in once more, unable to resist the charm and depth of the performance. Even the wealthy man leaned forward, fully engaged, no longer a skeptic, but a witness to something extraordinary. By the time she reached the final notes of this section, there was a tangible sense of admiration in the room. People felt a connection to her music that transcended words. It was not just entertainment. It was an experience, a shared moment of emotion that left a lasting impression. The wealthy man, humbled and thoughtful, realized that he had learned something valuable tonight, not just about music, but about perception, respect, and the unexpected brilliance that could emerge when someone was given a chance to shine. As the young waitress concluded this part of her performance, she allowed the final note to linger, letting it resonate in the room. The silence that followed was filled with appreciation, awe, and a newfound respect. The guests, previously doubtful and amused, now sat in quiet reflection, their minds touched by the talent they had witnessed. The wealthy man nodded slightly, acknowledging her skill without words, a silent gesture of recognition and admiration. It was a moment that would be remembered long after the music faded, a reminder that true talent could not be ignored and that sometimes the most extraordinary experiences came from the most unexpected places. As the young waitress continued to play, the room seemed to transform around her. The clinking of glasses, the soft murmurs, and even the faint rustling of menus had all but disappeared. Every eye was on her, every ear attuned to the music that flowed so naturally from her hands. There was a confidence in the way she moved across the keys, a quiet determination that seemed to speak louder than words ever could. The wealthy man, who had spent the evening laughing and boasting, now sat in thoughtful silence, realizing that he had never truly appreciated the depth of human talent before this moment. The melody began to take on new layers, each note carefully chosen to evoke emotion. It was no longer just a performance. It was a story unfolding in real time. Her fingers glided effortlessly, sometimes gentle and soft, sometimes strong and commanding, guiding the listeners through a journey that felt both intimate and universal. The audience could sense the passion behind every chord, and it stirred something deep within them. Guests shifted in their seats, leaning forward, their expressions a mixture of awe and admiration. Some were quietly moved, their eyes reflecting the unexpected beauty that had entered their evening. Even the restaurant staff, who had seen her move trays and serve tables countless times, now felt a new respect, a recognition that there was more to this young woman than they had realized. She had always played the piano in private, a way to express feelings she could not always put into words. Today, however, she realized that her music could touch others in ways she had never imagined. The laughter and mockery from the wealthy man earlier seemed like a distant memory now, replaced by a sense of purpose and clarity. She was no longer the unnoticed waitress. She was a storyteller, a creator, someone who could command attention through her art. Every key she pressed became a bridge, connecting her to the audience and allowing them to feel a piece of her soul. The wealthy man's gaze could not leave her. He had expected something simple, a minor embarrassment perhaps, but what he witnessed was extraordinary. He shifted slightly in his chair, feeling a mixture of emotions he could not quite name. Pride in his wealth, influence, and social standing had given him a false sense of certainty, but now those feelings were replaced by admiration and humility. He was learning something about assumptions and the power of human ability, lessons he had rarely confronted, and it all came from someone he had dismissed too quickly. The melody began to rise, carrying a sense of urgency and excitement. It was as if the music itself was alive, pulsing with energy and emotion. Guests could feel the rhythm in their chests, their hearts beating in sync with the notes. The young waitress closed her eyes briefly, letting herself be fully absorbed in the music, forgetting the audience, the wealthy man, and the restaurant around her. In that moment, it was just her and the piano, an intimate conversation between her soul and the keys. Each note was deliberate yet fluid, a reflection of years of practice, patience, and unspoken dreams. As she played, she noticed subtle reactions in the audience. A couple of guests leaned closer to each other, exchanging whispered comments filled with admiration. Some wiped away quiet tears, moved by the depth of feeling conveyed without a single word. The wealthy man, too, seemed changed, his posture less rigid, his expression softer. He realized that the power of the moment was not in wealth or status, but in the ability to share something genuine, something that could evoke emotion and create a shared experience. He had been a spectator, a critic, and now he was humbled by the beauty of what he had underestimated. The young waitress allowed herself a small smile as she noticed the effect her music had. It was not pride, but a quiet satisfaction, a realization that her hidden talent could break barriers and touch lives unexpectedly. She had always believed in her music, but seeing it impact others in real time was a new and profound experience. She felt a sense of connection with each person in the room, knowing that through her performance, she had offered a piece of herself, a glimpse of her passion, and a testament to perseverance. The piano had become more than an instrument. It was a voice, a medium through which she could communicate without limitations. The melody shifted again, this time slower, softer, more reflective. It was a moment for the audience to breathe, to absorb the emotions carried in each note. The wealthy man sat back, his hands clasped loosely, letting the music wash over him. For once, he was silent, not calculating or judging, but simply listening and feeling. He realized that he had been wrong to doubt her, wrong to assume that her role as a waitress limited her abilities. This moment was teaching him the power of humility, the importance of looking beyond appearances, and the beauty that could emerge when someone is given the opportunity to shine. The young waitress continued, her fingers moving with a delicate balance of control and freedom. She introduced subtle changes, improvisations that reflected her mood and personality. The audience sensed the spontaneity, feeling the authenticity and sincerity behind every chord. It was not just skill, it was expression, an intimate sharing of herself with everyone present. People who had entered the restaurant with expectations of luxury and entertainment now found themselves captivated by the raw human talent unfolding before them. They had come for an evening of elegance, and yet they were witnessing something far more profound. As the music reached a crescendo, the room seemed to hold its breath. Every guest was fully present, absorbed in the performance, feeling the rise and fall of emotion in each note. The wealthy man could no longer maintain any pretense of superiority. He had been the instigator of doubt, the source of amusement earlier in the evening, and now he was learning a lesson in humility. He watched her, realizing that true talent and passion cannot be measured by social status or appearances. He felt a strange warmth in his chest, a recognition of the value of human ability and dedication. The young waitress, fully immersed in the music, sensed the shift in the room. She was aware of the audience, but it no longer felt intimidating. Instead, it was encouraging, a silent partnership between her and those listening. She played with confidence and grace, allowing the piano to carry her emotions while guiding the listeners through a journey of sound. The wealth, the power, the social hierarchy of the room had faded, replaced by a shared experience of awe and wonder. In this moment, everyone was equal, united by the power of music. As she moved into the final portion of this section, the melody softened once more, carrying a sense of resolution and calm. The audience could feel the story reaching a gentle conclusion, each note carefully placed to leave a lasting impression. The wealthy man leaned back slightly, eyes fixed on her, a quiet admiration evident in his gaze. He had witnessed something extraordinary, a reminder that life often holds surprises and that talent and passion are not always where one expects to find them. The young waitress concluded the piece with a gentle flourish, letting the last note resonate in the air before slowly lifting her hands from the keys. The room remained silent for a moment, as if collectively holding its breath, before a soft ripple of applause began to spread. It started quietly, almost hesitantly, and then grew steadily, filling the restaurant with appreciation and acknowledgement. The wealthy man, now fully engaged and respectful, joined in, clapping sincerely. He approached her quietly, offering a nod of recognition that spoke more than words ever could. She smiled modestly, acknowledging the applause without arrogance. It was not about proving anyone wrong. It was about sharing a part of herself, a talent nurtured in private and now revealed to the world. The audience, captivated and moved, had experienced something rare, a moment of genuine connection and emotion that transcended social barriers and expectations. The wealthy man, humbled and reflective, had learned a lesson in perception, respect, and the unexpected brilliance that can emerge when someone is given the opportunity to shine. As she returned to her role as a waitress, carefully setting down a tray and checking on the guests, the room buzzed with quiet conversations. People spoke in low tones, still processing what they had witnessed, sharing their admiration and disbelief. The wealthy man sat back, thoughtful, no longer focused on status or appearances, but on the power of talent and the importance of recognizing it when it emerges. The young waitress moved gracefully between tables, her performance complete, leaving behind a sense of awe and a lasting impression that would be remembered by everyone present. For a long time, she had stepped into the spotlight, revealed her hidden talent, and transformed an ordinary evening into something truly extraordinary. The room had settled into a quiet anticipation after the young waitress had concluded her last piece. The rich and influential guests who had been talking and laughing earlier were now fully absorbed, their conversations replaced by thoughtful silence. The wealthy man who had first doubted her now sat, leaning slightly forward, his eyes fixed on her with genuine respect. He had underestimated her at first, thinking she was just another server, and now he was realizing how completely wrong he had been. The performance had changed not only the atmosphere of the restaurant, but the perception of everyone present. It was as though a new energy had entered the room, one that demanded attention and admiration. The young waitress remained calm, her hands resting lightly on her sides as she took a small, measured breath. She did not seek recognition, but there was a quiet satisfaction in knowing that her music had spoken louder than words ever could. Each guest felt the authenticity in her performance. There was no pretense, only the pure expression of her passion. People were drawn to it, captivated by the sincerity of her art. They were not witnessing just skill, but a story told through sound, an intimate journey that connected everyone in the room in a way that few experiences could. The wealthy man, who had bet against her abilities, now felt a humbling sense of wonder. He had been so sure of himself, so confident in his assumptions, and yet here he was, completely taken by surprise. He watched her carefully, studying her poise, the ease with which she handled the piano, and the genuine emotion that flowed from her fingers. There was no arrogance in her performance, no desire to prove him wrong, only the quiet power of talent expressed naturally. He realized that he had been blind to the possibility that someone so ordinary in appearance could carry such extraordinary skill and depth. The audience, too, had been transformed. Guests who had initially come to enjoy a luxurious dinner now found themselves enchanted by the unexpected display of artistry. Their attention was fully captured, their admiration quietly growing with every note. Some of the staff, who had been used to watching her serve tables without notice, were now astonished, seeing her in a completely different light. The young waitress, once invisible in her role, had become the center of attention without even trying. Her presence on the piano bench commanded respect, a quiet authority born from dedication and talent. She began to play again, this time choosing a melody that was both soft and haunting. Her fingers glided across the keys with precision, the notes weaving a story that seemed to unfold effortlessly. It was as if she was speaking directly to each listener, conveying emotions that could not articulate themselves. The wealthy man listened intently, realizing that he had not experienced music like this in a long time. If ever, he had expected a simple, perhaps even comical, performance, but instead, he found himself immersed in an intricate and moving composition. The room, too, felt alive with the resonance of her talent. The once noisy environment now unified in quiet appreciation. As the music continued, small details began to catch the attention of those watching. The subtle shifts in tempo, the delicate transitions between chords, and the improvisations she added showcased not only her technical ability, but her creative spirit. It was evident that every movement had been practiced countless times, yet it still felt spontaneous and heartfelt. The wealthy man's initial amusement had completely disappeared, replaced by a sincere curiosity and admiration. He could see that talent like hers was rare and precious, something that could not be judged or predicted by appearances alone. The melody grew stronger, more dynamic, filling every corner of the restaurant. The young waitress played with a quiet intensity, a focus that seemed to exclude everything but the music itself. The audience felt the tension, the emotion building with each note, drawing them deeper into the performance. Some guests sat forward, their expressions reflecting awe and amazement. Others closed their eyes, allowing the music to envelop them completely. Even the staff paused their duties momentarily, caught by the compelling sound that now dominated the room. The wealthy man, usually quick to assert his presence and influence, found himself humbled and silent, caught in the unexpected power of the performance. The young waitress allowed the music to breathe, pausing occasionally, letting each note resonate fully before continuing. She understood the impact of silence as much as sound, using it to heighten emotion and anticipation. The audience felt the care she put into every detail, recognizing that this was not just about playing the piano, but about creating a moment that could not be forgotten. The wealthy man watched closely, noticing her control and composure. She had taken something as ordinary as a piano in a restaurant and turned it into an instrument of connection and beauty. She introduced subtle variations into the melody, a touch of improvisation that highlighted her creativity and understanding of the instrument. The notes flowed seamlessly, carrying the audience along with her. Each chord struck an emotional chord within the listeners, and the wealthy man could feel his skepticism giving way to respect. He realized that he had judged hastily, assuming that her role as a waitress limited her capabilities. Now he understood that talent could be hidden in unexpected places and that true skill often went unnoticed until someone had the courage and opportunity to reveal it. The young waitress played with a fluidity that made the complex seem effortless. Every gesture, every subtle movement of her fingers reflected a deep understanding of the music. The room felt transformed, the energy now one of shared wonder and admiration. The wealthy man, who had been the source of doubt and amusement earlier, felt a growing sense of humility. He recognized the importance of acknowledging and valuing talent regardless of social standing or preconceived notions. He had come seeking entertainment, perhaps even validation of his superiority, but he was receiving a lesson in humility and respect. As the performance progressed, the melody shifted to a more emotional tone, expressing a mixture of hope, longing, and quiet joy. The audience was fully absorbed, experiencing a spectrum of feelings guided by the young waitress's skillful interpretation. Each note seemed to reach into the hearts of the listeners, creating a shared emotional journey. The wealthy man, once so focused on asserting his influence, now sat quietly, letting the music affect him. He felt a deep appreciation for her courage and the way she had embraced the opportunity to reveal her talent, transforming the evening into something unforgettable. The young waitress concluded this section with a soft, lingering chord, allowing it to resonate fully before gently lifting her hands from the keys. The room remained silent for a moment, as if collectively holding its breath, before a wave of applause slowly built, filling the restaurant with appreciation and admiration. The wealthy man joined in, his clapping sincere, a sign of respect and acknowledgement for the unexpected brilliance he had witnessed. The audience's response was unanimous, a testament to the power of genuine talent expressed with sincerity and emotion. She smiled quietly, acknowledging the applause without seeking excessive attention. The impact of her performance was clear in the expressions of those around her. Guests, staff, and the wealthy man himself had all been touched by the experience, their perceptions and assumptions reshaped by the unexpected display of talent. The young waitress had transformed an ordinary evening into a remarkable moment, demonstrating that courage, skill, and authenticity could leave a lasting impression beyond wealth, status, or appearances. As she returned to her duties, setting down trays and checking on tables, the atmosphere of the restaurant remained altered. Conversations continued in hushed tones, with many guests still processing what they had experienced. The wealthy man sat quietly, reflective, no longer focused on asserting dominance or impressing others, but on appreciating the power of talent and the importance of recognizing it when it appeared. The young waitress, though back in her role, carried herself with a quiet confidence, knowing that she had shared something meaningful and profound with the world. Her music had connected hearts, transformed perceptions, and left an unforgettable mark on everyone present, proving that true artistry and passion could never be underestimated. After the young waitress had returned to her role, the restaurant still felt different. The air seemed lighter, filled with a sense of admiration and quiet excitement. Guests who had once been distracted by their own conversations now found themselves sharing smiles and whispers about what they had just witnessed. It was as though the evening had shifted into a new rhythm, one guided by the unexpected brilliance of her piano performance. People were no longer simply patrons in a luxurious setting. They were witnesses to something rare and beautiful, a moment that would linger in their memories long after the night ended. The wealthy man, who had initially scoffed at the idea of her playing, now sat back in his chair, contemplative. He had been humbled by the experience, realizing that assumptions based on appearance or occupation could not capture the depth of someone's talent or heart. For the first time that evening, he felt a genuine respect, not only for her skill, but for the courage it had taken to stand and play in front of an audience that had doubted her. He recognized that her music had done more than entertain. It had revealed character, strength, and a quietly powerful confidence that could not be ignored. Other guests spoke softly among themselves, sharing their astonishment and admiration. Many admitted they had been wrong to judge her at first glance, underestimating the young woman who had walked among them unnoticed all evening. Some wiped tears from their eyes, quietly moved by the depth of emotion conveyed in each note. The performance had been more than just music. It had been a story of resilience, patience, and the joy of expressing one's inner self. Guests felt privileged to have witnessed such an authentic display, realizing that moments like these were rare and precious. Even the restaurant staff, who had worked alongside her day after day, began to see her differently. They recalled the hours she had spent practicing quietly, the dedication she had shown to a skill that had remained largely hidden until now. Her presence on the piano bench had transformed her from a diligent server into a remarkable artist, someone capable of commanding a room with talent and emotion. It was inspiring, a reminder that everyone carries stories and abilities beyond what the world initially perceives. The young waitress continued her duties with a calm composure, her movements as careful and precise as ever. But there was a new lightness in her step, a quiet confidence that had not been there before. She carried herself with a sense of achievement, knowing that she had shared something deeply personal and meaningful with everyone present. She had turned an ordinary evening into a memorable one, leaving an impact that went far beyond the music itself. Every smile, every glance, and every quiet expression of admiration reminded her of the power of courage and authenticity. The wealthy man, still seated at his table, reflected on the evening's events. He had come seeking entertainment and perhaps a chance to assert his influence, but he had left with a lesson in humility and perspective. He had seen the young waitress's talent firsthand, and he could no longer dismiss or underestimate her abilities. The performance had shifted the balance of power in the room, not in terms of wealth or status, but in respect and admiration earned through skill, passion, and authenticity. It was a humbling experience, one that challenged his assumptions and broadened his understanding of human potential. Word of her performance began to spread quietly among the guests. Some shared their experiences with friends or family, recounting the unexpected and breathtaking display of talent they had witnessed. The young waitress's music had become a talking point, a shared story that connected people even outside the restaurant. They spoke not only of her technical skill, but of the emotion she conveyed, the way she transformed the space and captured their attention without effort. It was a reminder that true talent often lies hidden, waiting for the right moment to shine. As the night progressed, the young waitress found herself reflecting on her journey. She had worked hard for years, practicing in quiet spaces, honing her skill, and nurturing a love for music that had sustained her through difficult times. She had never sought recognition or applause, but tonight she had experienced both in abundance. More importantly, she had experienced the fulfillment of sharing her passion with others, of touching lives through her art. It was a powerful reminder of why she had devoted herself to music in the first place. The wealthy man finally approached her as she cleared the last tables, his demeanor different from before. There was no arrogance, no hint of judgment, only a sincere acknowledgement of her talent. He offered a nod of respect, his eyes reflecting a newfound appreciation for the young woman who had so unexpectedly captivated the room. The gesture was small, but it carried a weight of understanding and admiration that spoke volumes. He had been proven wrong, and he accepted it gracefully. Recognizing the value of humility and open-mindedness, the young waitress responded with a polite smile, acknowledging the recognition without letting it distract her. She had not played for praise or validation, but she understood the impact of her performance. The music had spoken for her, conveying what words could not, and now the audience, including the once skeptical wealthy man, had been moved. It was a shared experience, a moment of connection that transcended social boundaries and reminded everyone present of the power of authenticity and dedication. As the evening came to a close, guests began to leave, carrying with them memories of a performance that had transformed the ordinary into something extraordinary. The young waitress continued her duties, serving with the same care and attention as always, but with a quiet sense of accomplishment and pride. She had proven to herself and to others that talent, when nurtured and expressed, could create moments of beauty and connection that lingered long after the music ended. The restaurant returned to its usual rhythm, but the impression of her performance remained. Guests shared stories, staff remembered the night with admiration, and the wealthy man, once full of certainty, now carried a quiet humility. The young waitress had shown that courage, skill, and passion could overcome doubt and expectation, leaving an unforgettable mark on all who witnessed it. She had transformed not only the evening but the perceptions of those around her, proving that the most remarkable moments often come from the most unexpected sources. In the days that followed, her story quietly spread beyond the restaurant walls. People spoke of the young waitress who had turned a routine evening into a magical experience, with nothing more than her piano and her heart. Invitations to perform at private gatherings and events began to appear, yet she remained grounded, continuing to serve tables with the same warmth and dedication. Her talent had opened doors, but it had not changed her essence. She remained humble, kind, and focused on sharing her music in meaningful ways. Through it all, she carried the knowledge that her abilities could touch lives in ways she had never imagined. The performance had been a turning point, not just in how others saw her, but in how she saw herself. She had embraced her talent fully, faced the doubt of others with grace, and demonstrated that true artistry was more than skill. It was courage, authenticity, and the willingness to share a piece of one's soul with the world. That night, in that restaurant, she had not only played the piano, she had changed the atmosphere, transformed expectations, and left a lasting impression that would remain in the hearts of all who had listened.